What's up YouTube, Annie here. Today's video, we're gonna talk about travel safety. If you hadn't noticed, I am a single woman, hi, who often travels alone. Now people often ask me if I'm afraid to travel alone. And quite honestly, the answer is no. And that's because I am hyper prepared and hyper aware. So today I wanted to share with you 5 tips to make sure that you are safe, prepared, and have a wonderful time. Tip number 1 is to make sure that your technology works before you go. I made this mistake. So when I recently went to Paris, I landed in country and I realized that my phone wasn't working. I, like a dum-dum, had forgotten to let my cell phone carrier know that I was going to be traveling internationally, and I hadn't added the international option to my cell service plan. My bad. Now, you should always be able to get around without technology. However, I was meeting a driver, and so he was trying to contact me and the messages weren't coming through. I was trying to text my friend and let her know that I had landed. Those messages weren't going through. Now, thankfully, I was able to connect to the airport Wi-Fi, and that way I was able to get my messages out through text and through WhatsApp. But I could have avoided the entire situation if I had just done a little bit more research ahead of time and made sure that my cell phone would work when I landed. So don't be like me, make sure that your technology is set up to work before you land. Tip number 2 has to do with getting around, particularly when you're in a car. So I always like to pull up a map before I go somewhere and study it a little bit, make sure that I familiarize myself with where my hotel is located, where the major sites are that I'm going. So I just have a general idea of the different neighborhoods and the different directions. Now, whenever possible, I like to use ride sharing because it does have that built-in tracking on an app. And you can bet that I am the person sitting in the back looking at that map, making sure that that person is driving to where I expect them to go. So this is easily done when you're in a large city that has ride sharing programs. But even if you get into a taxi, if you can pull up your GPS and just make sure that you're headed in the right direction, you're not going where you're not supposed to go, this just does wonders for your safety. Tip number 3 has to do with attire. Y'all, this should go without saying, but respect local customs. Dress like the locals. Now, I am an independent lady and I like to wear what I like to wear. And yes, I absolutely believe that we should be able to wear what we want without being body shamed or made to feel like targets. But we also have to remember that as Western women, going into places that are not Western customed, things are not always the same. So you can save yourself a lot of discomfort, but also not make yourself a target if you research ahead of time and understand some of the local customs and try to adhere to those. For example, I mentioned in a previous video that I like to fly on Qatar Airways, and Qatar Airways typically connects in the Hamad Airport, which is in Doha, which is in Qatar. So you're going through an international airport, which is great. You should be able to wear whatever you want. However, you are still in the Middle East. So whenever I go through Doha, I try to wear something that covers my body. I wear long pants, I wear a sweatshirt. Even wearing those things, I still get some looks from what I'm guessing are more conservative men. However, I did find that when I was traveling with male friends, they didn't look at me twice. Different customs, I'm not going to debate whether it's right or wrong. Just know that when you are in another country, you are on their turf, you are subject to their custom rules, regulations, and laws. So you will save yourself a world of hurt if you just do a little research ahead of time and try to abide by those customs. That actually goes for other areas where maybe the custom isn't conservative dressing, but you know, there are certain tropes that maybe go along with the culture that if you follow them, you'll absolutely stand out like a tourist. Here I'm thinking particularly of people who wear berets when they're in Paris. Locals don't really wear berets in Paris. So if you're wearing a beret, you're gonna stand out as a tourist. And if you stand out as a tourist, you're making yourself a target. So again, try to dress like the locals. Tip number 4 has to do with bags, purses, backpacks, things you put your stuff in. Whenever I travel in a crowded area, I always wear a bag with a zipper that is crossbody. It's an interesting thing. I always feel like living in the US, I am not afraid of being pickpocketed or like mugged. I'm more afraid of like being physically attacked or kidnapped, which is horrible in its own right. But whenever I travel to a place like Europe, I'm more hyper aware of pickpockets and like petty criminals. So that's why I always travel with a bag that has a zipper and is a crossbody. If it's crossbody, it's harder for somebody to just run by and snatch it off your body. And zippers are harder for pickpockets to get into and lift out your wallet, your passport, whatever you've got in there. Now, if you can have multiple zippers, great, but don't ever use like one of those tote bags that's open. That's just asking for a thief to come along and just push out your stuff, and that's gonna completely ruin your day. Tip number 5 is situational awareness. Basically, this boils down to don't look like an opportunity. So when you're walking around, you wanna look like you know where you're going. Even if you don't know where you're going, look like you know where you're going. You wanna move with purpose. So don't walk around looking at your phone, trying to figure out where you're going. Don't walk around with a map trying to figure out where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, pull over to the side or duck into a cafe and then figure it out. And if you're in a situation where you can't pull over to the side or it's empty, it's dangerous, then go where the people are. Once upon a time, I was traveling in Cabo for spring break. This was a long time ago. And I had a friend of mine who got very, very drunk and she got kicked out of a bar. I happened to be with her at the time, and so I just picked her up and rushed her out the nearest door, which happened to be in a back alleyway, a very dark, sketchy back alleyway. And I very quickly realized that this was a bad situation to be in. Now, I could see a group of people walking in front of us. They were obviously tourists. So I called out to them and asked if we could walk with them until we got out to the main street. So even though they were complete strangers, there's more safety in that group numbers. So don't be afraid to jump in with a group of people if you find yourself alone and sketched out. And with that, just have your head on a swivel. Know what's going on around you. Know where your exit plan is. Know how to get back to your hotel. Being aware of your surroundings is your best line of defense. So if I could wrap this whole thing up in a bow, I would basically say, don't look like a tourist. Think about how you move through your day-to-day life and then emulate that when you travel. By moving with purpose, dressing appropriately, and using technology to assist you and not distract you, you won't stand out as an opportunity for people who want to take advantage of you. So I hope that was helpful. If there are any tips that I missed that you think I should have included, drop them down in the comments so that we can all learn together. Until next time, go create a life you love. Bye.